The tower wasn't locked. They told me the last guy left in a hurry, but no one said why. Just that the logs were still up there. It stood about 70 feet above the tree line. Narrow metal steps, groaning with rust. The kind that made you feel like every step might be the last quiet one you'd take. The inside was cleaner than I expected. Dust, sure. Spiderwebs in the corners. But nothing broken. The bed still made. Stove intact. Radio unplugged but responsive. I dropped my pack near the cot and opened the shutters. Forest in every direction. Thick pine and birch stretching far past visibility. No trails. No signs of other towers. The job was basic: monitor smoke, report signs, write twice daily check-ins. No real danger, just time. Weeks of silence. Maybe months. I found the logbook in the top drawer of the desk. Canvas-bound. Weathered. First page blank. I flipped a few pages in. The entry started on July 3rd. Neat handwriting, all uppercase. Each one began with a timestamp and ended with initials, RD. The first few entries were dry. 8 o'clock. Light wind from west. Visibility clear. 1300 hours. Blue haze over northwest ridge. Possible dust. 2030. No visible fire. Sky pink. Temperature mild. There was a rhythm to it. 3 per day. Morning. Midday. Dusk. Every entry was short. Clipped. Neutral. It was like reading heartbeats. I flipped to the back to see how long it lasted. The last page was dated October 1st. Nearly 3 months' worth. That one was shorter than the others. Just one line. Night fog. Quiet. Something in the trees. I reread it twice. No follow-up. No initials. Just that. I looked out the window. No fog. Just fading light. I flipped a few pages back and scanned earlier days. They started changing mid-September. Words like, "Heard it again," or "Too quiet today," started appearing. But no explanation of what it was. Nothing panicked. Just small breaks in tone. Like the entries were becoming less about the forest and more about the person watching it. I left the book on the desk and turned on the stove. Heated a can of soup. Ate it too fast. Felt the silence more after. Outside, the light kept falling. Nothing moved out there. No birds. No wind. Just a stillness that made the leaves look artificial. When I lay down that night, I thought about that last line again. Something in the trees. I told myself I'd seen worse. That the guy probably got spooked by a bear or a storm. Still, before I slept, I checked the locks. Twice. The morning was clear. Sky pale blue, almost white near the edge. Trees holding still like they didn't trust the breeze. I made coffee, checked the radio, nothing new. No smoke. No voices. Just static. Then I opened the logbook again. July 4th. Morning. Cloud cover west. Something moving below, out of range. Afternoon. Heard distant crackling. Not thunder. Evening. No visual confirmation. Still listening. That line caught me. Still listening. Like the forest was saying something. I scanned back through July, then August. The entries were consistent. He logged what he saw. But then, slowly, it shifted, what he heard. August 12th. 12 o'clock. Rhythmic impact sound. Possibly wood on wood. August 16th. 1300 hours. Hollow echo returned. No bird response. By mid-September, almost every note included sound. But when I stepped outside, the forest felt wrong in the opposite way. Too quiet. Not just birds, the whole forest. No rustle, no insects. Like someone had pressed pause. I stood for 10 minutes listening. Nothing. Then I called out, just to break it. "Anyone out there?" My voice didn't echo. It just dropped. I climbed back up and checked my reflection in the window. I looked tired, unshaved, but normal. I told myself maybe the elevation was affecting acoustics. That still air could do weird things. But when I opened the log again, I noticed something else. The September 14th entry. 10 o'clock, felt watched. No movement. 1600 hours, same sensation. Still nothing. September 16th. 1300 hours, saw flash of red between trees. Not fire. Not clothing. That made me pause. I looked out over the northwest ridge. Nothing red. Just endless green and brown. Then I flipped back to July 7th. There it was again. Red again. 10:32, vanished on second glance. I pulled out a pen. Marked every mention of red. They weren't daily, but regular. Always short sightings. Always in the northwest quadrant. I stepped out to the railing with binoculars. Swept the ridge. Slowly. Carefully. Nothing. But right as I turned away, something flickered at the edge of my vision. Gone before I could focus. I didn't write it down. I just stood there, listening. And when the wind finally picked up again, I didn't feel relieved. I felt like something had been holding its breath. I spent most of the third day watching the northwest. Didn't write anything in the radio log. Barely ate. Just kept going back to the railing, binoculars in hand, sweeping the same line of trees like they'd eventually give something away. The forest never moved. But the journal did. The older entries, the ones I'd already read, weren't the same. I don't mean I remembered them wrong. I mean the words were different. Slightly. August 5th, the entry about cloud cover used to end with no movement. Now it ended with no movement. But I felt mirrored. I flipped back to July 10th. The one about wind picking up. It had said, gusts from south, clearing smell of smoke. Now it read, gusts from south. Can't smell anything anymore. Tiny edits. Enough to doubt myself. But I hadn't misread them. I remembered the phrasing. I remembered the rhythm. This journal wasn't printed. It wasn't typed. It was ink on paper. And it was changing. I flipped through 10 entries at random. 4 were altered. Short additions. Subtracted words. Slight shifts in tone. All moving in the same direction, toward uncertainty. Like the man writing them had started confident, then lost faith in what he was seeing. I held the book in both hands and checked the last few pages again. October 1st, still the final entry. Still just one line. Night fog. Quiet. Something in the trees. But now, in the margin beside it, there was a symbol. Just a dot. Small, black, pressed hard. The paper was dented beneath it. It hadn't been there before. I checked earlier pages. No symbols. Just clean writing. Until August 30th, another dot. Bottom right corner. No comment. No note. Just there. I flipped forward. September 12th, another. It was like someone was marking moments. Or tracking something. The air inside the tower felt different now. Denser. I opened all the windows. Let the light in. Did a perimeter walk at noon. Took the radio with me. Walked the whole circular platform. Still nothing. But when I sat down to eat, the journal was open on the desk. I hadn't left it open. It was turned to September 23rd. A date I hadn't read yet. And the entry was just one line. Observer sees himself, but not where he stands. I looked up from the desk. Saw my own reflection in the dark window glass. But I wasn't standing. I was sitting. Exactly where I was. But the man in the reflection was turned slightly. looking at me. Not past me, at me. And smiling. I started reading entries out loud, quietly, just to see if hearing the words changed them. It didn't, but it made them feel heavier. September 25th. Woke to knocking below. Didn't investigate. Afternoon wind carried sound. Like my name, stretched too thin. I stood at the window for a long time that day, looking down the metal steps, expecting to hear them groan. They didn't, but the silence felt rehearsed. That afternoon I saw the red. Just a flicker. Between two trunks. Far down the ridge. Too far for color to mean anything, but it felt red. The kind of red you see in dreams, when something means danger but never says it. I wrote my first log that day. 1308, flicker NW. Possibly light, possibly cloth. No response to call. I didn't mention how my voice broke when I called, or how I didn't wait long before going back inside. The journal stayed on the desk now. Always open. No matter where I left it. Sometimes I'd find it turned to entries I hadn't reached yet. Sometimes just one line visible, like a suggestion. That night I read September 27th. Trees mimicked movement. Leaves turned without wind. I shut the book. Left it face down. Next morning, I found every window shuttered. I hadn't closed them. But the light still came in, like the forest had moved closer. Branches too near. Like the tower had sunk into them overnight. I checked the steps. No rust flakes. No drag marks. But I found something at the base. A torn piece of fabric. Deep reddish brown. Not new. Not old. No initials. Just two thin cuts down the center, like someone had tried to split it, or wear it. I brought it up and left it on the desk. The journal was open to October 1st again. The final page. But the text had changed. It no longer said, "Something in the trees." Now it read, "He is in the trees." No initials. No timestamp. Just that line. I sat down, unsure whether I was supposed to read it, or copy it. I checked my own logbook. Still blank except for yesterday's note. The radio crackled. Then died again. I tried not to look out the windows. But the trees were closer. Not visibly, just spatially. The way a person can stand at the same distance, and suddenly feel nearer. I took the journal and hid it under the mattress. Went to the sink. Washed my hands. But when I came back, the book was on the desk again. Open. Same page. Same line. But now there was a small dot beneath it. Pressed hard. A seventh one. I stopped writing in my own log. Didn't see the point. Every time I tried, the words felt wrong. Offer them. Like copying someone else's tone in your own voice. And when I did manage to get a few sentences down, the journal would already have them. Slightly cleaner. Slightly colder. October 2nd, my notebook read. Checked ridge. Clear. Quiet. No red today. The journal, which I had locked in the footlocker that morning, said 10:14, no red today. Observer disappointed. Unwilling to admit. Same thought. Different intent. I didn't remember being disappointed. But when I read it, I felt it. That pull in the stomach. Like missing someone you don't know yet. The dots were spreading. Not just on entries. Now in margins. Corners. Even between lines. Some were smudged like they'd been drawn, then wiped, then pressed again. I counted 11. All between August 28th and now. No pattern. Just presence. The radio started picking up static in waves. Not voices. Just shape. Like someone turning a dial between languages. At 2:40 p.m., I heard a thump on the stairs. Sharp. Hollow. One impact. Nothing else. I waited. 15 minutes. No second sound. But the trees felt closer again. That night, I dreamed of the journal. It wasn't in the tower anymore. It was in a clearing. On a rock. Open and waiting. When I reached for it, my hand moved wrong. Not slower, misaligned. Like my fingers didn't understand distance. I woke with my arm stretched off the bed. Hand frozen midair. The journal sat on the desk. Open to today. One line waited. Observer stops resisting. It wasn't a log anymore. It was a voice. Not speaking, not commanding. Just stating. Like it always knew. And below that line, the next entry, already written. 1514. Observer copies entry. I stared at it. Didn't want to move. But my hand went to the pen. Without thinking. And I copied it. Same ink. Same spacing. It didn't feel like writing. It felt like alignment. I set the pen down. Looked out the window. The red flicker was there again. Closer than ever. Standing still. Then it moved, not toward the ridge. Not away. But sideways. As if circling. I stopped turning the pages. Didn't need to. Each morning the journal was already open to the right entry. Even when I shoved it under the mattress, sealed it in the drawer, locked it in the footlocker, it would be waiting on the desk by breakfast. Sometimes I'd find my own handwriting on pages I hadn't touched. Not copied. Predicted. The same slant. Same pressure. But I hadn't moved the pen. On October 3rd, the journal logged. 9 o'clock. Observer eats half a protein bar. Chews slowly. Fakes appetite. I didn't eat that until 9:02. I only chose the bar because the canned stuff made me gag. But the log knew. And then I noticed something worse. There were pages I couldn't remember writing, not even reading, but I knew what they said. October 5th. 10:12. Observer scratches left arm. Wonders about infection. 14:06. Writes line he hasn't read yet. The day hadn't happened. But when it did, I scratched my arm. Not because it itched. Because it felt right. I began watching myself from outside my own motion. Walking before deciding. Turning before hearing. One morning I caught myself standing over the desk, pen already uncapped, journal open, and I had no memory of standing up. That day the journal logged. 7:41. He knows. That night, the forest made a sound. Not wind. Not leaves. Not animal. Something like a syllable with no voice. A shape in the air. I didn't log it. The journal did. 2:03. Voice passes tree line. Observer forgets language. The next morning I tried to speak into the radio. My voice came out wrong. The words bent. I wrote a sentence on a spare notepad, just to prove I still could. The letters twisted. Not unreadable, just slightly off. Like another version of the alphabet. The red flicker stayed visible all day. Never moved. Never hid. It stood in the same spot, between two birches, as if waiting for something to be finished. That night I found a blank page in the journal. First I'd seen in weeks. Nothing on it. But in the bottom right corner, the dot was already there. Pressed deep. Like it had always been there, waiting for the rest to catch up. The line between reading and remembering started to blur. I'd look at an entry and feel like I'd known it for years. Not read it. Not written it. Just carried it. I stopped counting days. The sun came and went behind clouds, but I didn't check the time anymore. The journal did that for me. The tower felt smaller. Not claustrophobic, just concentrated. Every corner carried intention. Every object had been placed, not used. I tried to leave once. Walked down the steps, got 10 rungs below the platform before my legs locked. Not from fear. Not from pain. Just stillness. Like the journal hadn't written that movement, so the body refused to finish it. I stood there for 20 minutes, then turned back, climbed up. The journal was open. Failed exit. Returned without resistance. No timestamp. Just the title. That's when I stopped eating. But the journal didn't log that. It simply began writing for me. New entries appeared even when I stayed in bed. Lines about movement, gestures, thoughts I hadn't had, but started having after reading them. Observer reviews old pages. Finds comfort in repetition. Stands in doorway. Watches trees breathe. Smiles at reflection. Doesn't blink. I checked the windows. Each pane showed a slightly different forest. Same trees. But one looked windless. Another was darker. One showed the red figure up close, right at the base of the tower. Only when I blinked did the view return to normal. I opened my own notebook, the one I brought with me, and found it full. Every page. In my handwriting. But none of the entries were mine. They mirrored the journal. Almost word for word, just off by a day or two. Like I'd copied them before I'd seen them. Like I'd practiced being who the book needed. That night I heard the sound again. Closer. Inside the walls. Not scratching. Not breathing. A slow, rhythmic turning of pages. But the journal was on the desk. Closed. When I opened it, the pages flipped on their own. Stopped on a new entry. Integration complete. Observer is now environment. And beneath it, red is ready. I didn't know what that meant, but I stepped away from the desk, and for the first time, the tower groaned under my weight. Not like metal, like wood, like something was watching its own body move. The last morning didn't feel like a morning, just light, slow and sour, leaking through the glass. I didn't wake. I was simply upright. The journal sat closed. No dots. No title. I checked the radio. The red light blinked. It hadn't worked in weeks. I hadn't touched it. But now a voice came through. Not speaking. Not noise. Typing. Short bursts. Like someone was logging manually. Then a pause. Then a soft tone, the kind old radios used to play to confirm transmission. The logbook was already open again. But I didn't see writing. I saw reflection. Pages looked glossy, like wet paper. When I leaned in, I saw myself. Not the me from now, thinner, slow, blurred at the edges. But the version that had arrived. New boots. Tired eyes. Hope of silence. He blinked. I didn't. He looked at me. I watched. The page turned itself. New entry. Successor expected 8:04. Tower intact. Journal primed. Below it, my initials. Not written. Printed. As if they'd always been there. My initials, not his. The date was today. But the ink looked old. I left the book open. Didn't write anything else. Didn't move until the light changed. When it did, I stepped away from the desk. Sat on the cot. Waited. At some point I saw a figure below. Climbing. Same gait. Same hesitation at the midpint. Same pack. When they reached the landing, I didn't speak. Didn't move. They opened the door. Looked inside. Didn't see me. But paused at the journal. Picked it up. And turned the page. The end.